What's up guys, D2 from D2AOV.com. Today I'm going to be going over the new patch that's about to come out, depending on when I upload it. Probably around tomorrow the patch is going to hit. I'm going to be using my own article, which I published on January 16th. Initially there was a post on Arena Taiwan, and I went ahead and translated that and gave my thoughts on it. A few days after that, there was an official post on Reddit by Arena of Valor Official, and basically had the same information. I'm happy that my translations weren't off. Fun fact, I don't actually know Chinese, but I know a decent amount of Japanese, which helps me in certain situations where I'm unsure of the translation. I can look at the characters and kind of decipher based on the meanings of their characters, what they mean. So I would say I do a better job of translating than some random person who doesn't know any Chinese or any Eastern languages at all. But I'm certainly not fluent in Chinese. So I'm always happy to see that my translation ended up being correct, because sometimes I can look over something for hours and be like, what in the heck does this mean? It also doesn't help that sometimes the Taiwanese translators use the wrong terminology. Like for instance, down here, or where was it? It was somewhere. Basically, it's one of the items, yeah, where they they use the term acceleration effect, and I looked at the characters in Japanese or in Chinese basically. I'm like, I know that means acceleration. It doesn't mean movement speed, because they use a different word for movement speed, and that wasn't it. So I was like, I'm pretty sure this is what it is, but they're using a different word here. Anyway, rant over. Let's get on with the patch, and we'll just use mine because mine is pretty pictures and the Reddit does not. That said, I will first look at the Reddit post and note a couple of things. I didn't go over the bugs because it was 5 in the morning by the time I finished that article, and I was pretty tired. But a couple of things I want to point out here, which are reasonably big. This first one, fix a bug when Omen's normal attacks lagged a little when his passive ability was triggered. A little is an understatement. It lagged a lot, and in order to get around it, you had to actually move Omen. If you moved him, then he would actually start attacking. But for newer players, and even for experienced players who found this very, very annoying, this will be a help. This is actually a pretty big buff, actually. It's a bigger buff than some of the buffs you'll see, the actual buffs you'll see on some of these heroes. So this fixed bug is actually a nice buff to Omen. And then another thing I want to point out is an issue with the description of Annette's ability. So apparently you can only hit someone 4 times when they're in the middle, or the percent damage only applies 4 times in the middle, which is a really big thing that they left out. I'm gonna be honest here. I'm not really sure why they didn't have that in the first place, but just for you guys to know, you can only, if someone stands right in the middle, like for instance you hit them with a wind cuffs, or someone else has an ability that slows them down and they're stuck in the middle and you're like, yes, I get 8 instances of 2% damage. No, it's only 4, unfortunately. But you will hit them with the other 8 instances of your gust force, so that's all nice and dandy. Alright, let's get on with it. Let's start with the map changes, and these are actually pretty big. So the Abyssal Lane melee minion change. There's a bigger minion in the Abyssal Lane. One of the melee minions is bigger. He's noticeably bigger. I've been playing on Taiwan, and it's really good. If you're in the Abyssal Lane now, you get a lot more gold. Just to show you the difference, it is, if you get the last hit on it, this is the beginning game. I didn't want to go over the entire game, but in the beginning of the game, a normal melee minion gave you 56 gold. A ranged minion gave you 35. If you guys didn't know, melee minions give you more, so make sure you're there to pick up the melee minions before they die to the tower. Hint, hint. So 56 gold for a normal melee minion, but it is 91 gold for the new melee minion. That's a lot. And if you don't get the last hit, those numbers are 41 for the normal melee minion and 67 for the bigger melee minion. And that can add up over time, wave after wave after wave. It's a notable difference. I was playing on the Taiwan server. I was playing basically casual with like other bronze opponents and allies, but still, it was a noticeable difference while I was in the Abyssal Lane and the DS lane. So that is something to keep in mind. Also, moving on, there is a death by tower gold adjustment. So all the minions that die within a tower's attack range, so even if you kill them, even if you get the last hit, that's going to be reduced by 10%. And that's a really big deal. So if you combine all those things together, if you're comparing, if you miss the entire wave and they hit your tower, if they're under your tower and you don't get any of the last hits, because sometimes it's hard to get the last hit on a minion wave if they're dying in your tower. And compare that to getting the last hit on all 3 minions, like you're a mage who just, or not, maybe not a mage, but like someone who has a lot of attack damage, is easier to get the last hits. That's the difference of 60 gold per wave. So if you're consistently winning the matchup and you're pushing them behind the tower, especially in the abyssal lane, then you're going to be winning by 60 plus gold per wave, which obviously will turn into hundreds of gold. So that makes dual lane a little bit more, not viable, but important. Like you want to be there with your support a bit more often to make sure that you're winning that lane, because even if there's 2 heroes, like it used to be where if you had 2 heroes in the lane and you're bullying the one hero and they had to stand behind tower, it was actually better for the one hero because eventually they get more gold than the 2 heroes, even though they're getting pushed in. But now it's almost like the same thing, and then overall you're actually getting kind of more gold depending on, you know, the support items and everything. But yeah, winning the abyssal lane is a really, really big deal now, especially in that early game. So it's going to shift the dynamic of games from now on. Minion speed increase. They go from 300 to, they get a 25 unit per second increase 4 times. So by the end of by the 18-minute mark, they'll be at 400 movement speed, which is the base movement speed of Batman, to give you an idea. So that's nice. It will speed up the game. People are saying that this will cause the game to be even more snowbally, and I don't agree with that. I think the game will be just the game will snowball faster, but not more, if that makes any sense. Whatever's going to happen is going to just happen faster. And honestly, if you're the defending team, it kind of helps in a way, because then the minion waves will come to your door faster, and you can actually clear faster and start catching up that way. So I think everything will become faster. The comebacks will be faster, the snowball will be faster, whatever that happens. So I don't think it'll snowball harder. I think just everything in the game will just be sped up. That's all. Just imagine the game is played on 1.25 times speed, like you're on YouTube or something like that. But I gotta be honest. I was on the Taiwan server. I didn't really notice. It's not that much faster. It's not like the Clone Wars where they're just zooming down the field, but you know, it will make a difference, obviously, and it will help you, for instance, finish the game off if you're waiting for like a minion wave or something. So late game team fights will be much more decisive, because even if you don't have the minion wave on your side, you can quickly just clear, and the minions will arrive quicker than before. Abyssal Dragon and Abyssal Dragon and Dark Slayer buff time increase. This is nice. Not a whole lot to say about that. You know, it's if you get the buff, you have a better advantage, and obviously that makes it so that getting the buff is really nice. So even if you like die getting the buff, you will still have it for a while afterwards, so you can still use that advantage. The other thing is, I think the curse lasted a longer time than the buff, so now they're more in line with each other. So that's cool. Interface changes and system optimization. This is all fine and good. Sure, you get to dance, great. New like screen, great. This is whatever. I've been playing with this, it's just whatever. The KDA is great. Like showing certain parts is fine. Being able to show, or the fact that the standard games will only show you win rate from standard games is nice. Though it still show your 5v5 casuals, which is whatever. I don't really know anything about it. It's fine. The one thing that's really weird is the stat screen. They basically put the stats from 2 pages to 3 pages, and it just makes it more annoying to look at. It makes it harder to screenshot your results and show it to someone, because now you have to screenshot 3 things if you want to show them all. It's just bizarre. I don't know. I don't know why they did that. It's like, it wasn't like it was hard to look at. Maybe it just confused people. I'm not sure. I think everything else is like fine. It's kind of arguable whether it's better or not. It looks prettier, I suppose, but this one I think is like just worse. I don't know why. Anyway, let's get on to the meaty stuff. Let me take some tea. All right, item changes. These are big. These are big. So, Waterstone. The biggest thing here is more stacks, more gold. Like 15 gold was like nothing before, and and this, you give yourself gold as well as your ally, and this is a small price to pay for that. In fact, this is actually better. Movement speed is really, really good. So now it competes with Windstone in movement speed, and it competes a little bit better as far as getting gold when you're not in combat. right? So if you have the lowest gold on the team, and you have a windstone, then you get 50 per 30 seconds essentially. Whereas if you have the water stone and you're consistently going back to lane to clear a minion, I believe, I'm not really sure, I haven't tested this, but from what I experienced in a particular game, I think you actually have to have a teammate nearby. You can't just go to the wave by yourself and clear by yourself and get the gold, but I'm not quite sure about that. I think you need to be near a minion in order for you and your minion to get that gold. But this is pretty big, and this is really nice, honestly, for low-level supports. Right, lower level, or I should say supports in lower ranking games, right? Because what this allows them to do is you're not forced to have the lowest gold. You can actually have not the lowest gold and still be in a position where you're gaining more gold for yourself. So if you have just like, you know, some dumb teammate, which, let's be honest, it happens a lot, especially in gold or below or platinum and below, and some guy who just cannot, they just won't farm for whatever reason. They're constantly trying to fight or what have you, and they have 0 farm, and that's punishing you because now you cannot get the extra gold from windstone. So waterstone is going to be great at lower levels, and not only will you get more gold, you might just get a lot of gold. You might have the most gold in your team just by getting the extra gold without having the lowest gold on your team, but also because you don't need to have the lowest gold in the team. I think this is good overall, but it might cause problems where people might just pick waterstone away from the support in lower levels because they're like, no, I want all the gold. But they are building into more defensive items, so it's not like any random mage on your team can pick it. So that's a good thing. All right, let's get to the actual items here. And what they did, they basically made Tide Colors Mark the same exact stats as the Essence of the Wind, which is the one, basically everyone's picking Essence of the Wind. And overall, this patch is really great because they basically added 2.5 new items. We'll get to Purifying Bracers in a second, which is situational, but they basically added 2.5 items because no one in the right mind was ever going to pick these items. Now the stats match, and basically you're picking between Essence of the Wind with a shield, and between Tide Colors Mark, which has 40 regen, and then there's two passives with Tide Colors Mark. One of them provides HP regen to allies, and one of them provides the old Asterian's Buckler thing where you have 10% damage resistance, which if you guys didn't know, it resists against all damage, including true damage, so that's kind of cool. And you get 5% damage. So this is going to be a great item, especially for lower ranks. It even could be chosen at higher ranks if it calls for it. No pun intended. But this is going to be a great item just overall. It's going to be something that people can choose. If you want to just have the extra resistance on your team, like if your team is overall just kind of beefy and you don't think you're going to need to save one particular person, then this is going to be great because it's going to strengthen everyone. But if you need the panic shield, then you'll still go for Essence of the Wind. All right, next, Purifying Bracers. This is still not great. It's not a great item. It's very situational. Basically, you get Chagnar's effect. You purify everyone. The problem is it's 90 seconds, and I'm pretty sure the range is still short. So they made it better. They gave it armor. They made it like an item that you want to get in general. Like if Essence of the Wind and these other items didn't exist, then this would be a fine item to have. But purifying everyone is like very situational, and you'd have to have like something crazy. Like I guess you could use it against Mina, maybe against Grak or something. But other than that, even just the passives of something like Tide Colors Mark would be really, really nice to have. So this is going to be very, very situational. I feel like this is only going to be chosen by very high level players in very situational situations. Wow, I'm good at English. So yeah, I imagine we're only going to see this in like professional games in a very specific situation, because otherwise it's just not worth it. Even if you think you're going to need it, you're probably not good enough to use it at the right time, and it's 90 seconds long, and this is like automatic value from Tide Colors Mark or Essence of the Wind. Just much easier to use. Alright. Lastly, Ring of the Fiend. This is the other item other than Color's Mark that people will choose very often. And I was complaining before when they said acceleration effect. I went ahead and checked it, and it actually is 50% movement speed. That is nuts, to give you an idea of how fast it is. Arthur's Righteous Guard, his first ability, gives him 30% movement speed, and he books it, right? And that's 20% faster than that. Every single hero on your team is going to have at least 600 movement speed if they have boots. It's so fast, and it's your entire team within 800 units, which is relatively big. It's like the range of Sephiroth's first ability. It's so fast. So basically, this whole reveal enemies nonsense is like not even. Who cares? You're gonna be zooming your entire team towards them or away from them. It's gonna be absolutely nuts. And so on top of that, the only downside is that you don't get a shield, but the upside is it's barely less armor than the Essence of the Wind. And by the way, this gives you 15% CDR, 15% cooldown reduction. So if you are Pura, if you're Alice, someone who has very, very long cooldowns on the heal and the friendship, this is the go-to item for those heroes. There are heroes for whom this is the go-to item now. There's like not even questioning it. So yeah. 2.5 new items basically. This is lower level rank players, could be used in higher level as well in certain situations. This is only pro games, I would say, in certain situations, and this is the go-to item for heroes like Alice and Pyrrha. So yeah, good times, actual variety. You get to pick something other than Essence of the Wind. Feels good, man. Okay, let's move on. Shuriken and Fafnir's Talon. There's a cooldown on Vital Point and Dragon's Breath, which is the extra damage. Shuriken is whatever, but Fafnir's Talon, basically every 0.3 seconds, you deal 8% of the hero's remaining HP. Not their max HP, but their remaining HP. And I went and checked, went to 200 attack speed. It's impossible to shoot twice in 0.3 seconds, so you have to have like a special ability, and the biggest one that comes to mind is Yorn. Because now every single one of his fierce shots, when he does a fierce shot and he shoots 4 or 5 times, whatever it is, it will basically only apply to only some of them, depending on how fast your attack speed is. Fun fact, you can go check my most recent video actually, which is about attack speed, shows Yorn. And the faster his attack speed, the faster the fierce shot goes off. So actually, getting more attack speed will hurt if you actually have Fafnir's Talon, because you won't get as many Dragon's Breaths off. But yeah, this is very targeted toward Yorn. Other heroes like maybe Violet, I guess, you can attack very quickly after tactical fire. That's about it. I think there's maybe one other hero, but yeah. Oh, this could be for what's her face, Lindis as well, because she can Lunar Champion and all the effects from items apply to Lunar Champion. So this is also something against Lindis, but she doesn't really pick Fafnir's Talon anyway. All right. Jungling. So this is nice. It doesn't matter if you have a jungling item, the stacks will start counting for you already. That's cool. And in exchange, you need to get way more stacks. The stacks for the tier 2 item are 20. And I mean, this is an obvious point, but if you have like Mr. Stabby and you have like 25 stacks, it'll only be 20 until you get Soul Reaver. So just pointing that out. And yeah, so it goes to 30 stacks. Now you can actually do a lot more damage, a lot more attack speed, a lot more health, a lot more what have you. And this will make it so that the jungle items are even better. It'll make it so they'll be less likely to sell them at the end of the game. And it will, or I should say, but it will make it so that you can't really have more than one person on your team with a jungling item. So if you're in the side lane, it's probably not a good idea to get a jungling item because it'll take way too long to stack. You have to get 20 stacks just to match the old effect. And in order to max it out to get the maximum value, you're going to have to go to 30, which takes forever. And it's going to be unlikely you'll get to that point with another jungler on your team. So those are the item changes. Pretty cool in my opinion. Even though it's cool to have the jungle items on the side lane, I think that limiting jungle items to junglers certainly makes sense, and this is a good way to do it. It's not this is, you can't really prevent side laners from, you know, pick a jungling item. So just really highly discouraging it is, I think, the best way to go. All right, let's get to the balance changes. This article has the balance changes from January 15th or 16th, and the other changes, like to Quillen, are from a separate patch in late December. So we'll go go over that at the end. Starting with Natalia, they increased her range by 100 units each, like a in-game meter each, and that's a lot. It's like a step forward basically for a hero, and in those battles between the other mage, it's a really big deal, especially because you're outranging most heroes now, with the exception of maybe like Crixie or something like that. It's really, really long, and she does a ton of damage, so it feels kind of unfair. I'm not really sure why they did that, but I guess just quality of life. Good Natalia players will be even better now. You can shoot people from super far away. Yeah, she's going to be pretty good, even better than before. That's all I can say about that. Flash, they gave him a bit more damage. I was confused because it said the way they word it in the game is that he moves at a certain attack speed, or a certain movement speed in relation to what he had. So you would expect it to say he would go from 50% of his normal speed to 60%, but they translated as his self slow is 50 to 40%. And this was confirmed in the Reddit patch notes. It was also confirmed by myself in game. You just look how fast he's going, and you can tell. It's not very noticeable. I had to like use markers in the game to see how far he went, based on you know, which version it was on. So it's not super noticeable. These, after looking at this, the changes aren't that big. Probably this is the biggest change. The 10 seconds on the cooldown is the biggest difference. The ability power is like 100 damage ish, if you, depending on like where your build is at. 100 damage max, I should say. So this is like, this is also, this is pretty big. So yeah, he's slightly better, but he was already pretty good. So yeah. Next, Astrid. This is pretty big change, and they've always messed with Astrid, like trying to make her based on attack damage, trying to make her just her shield pop up normally. I think this is the best change that they've had for her so far. First of all, even though this isn't the biggest change as far as how good or bad she's going to be, it's very nice quality of life change to actually know what the heck is going on. It's like, is my HP higher or lower? I have no freaking clue. Now this is a lot easier. Basically, if Astrid is low on health, then she'll stun him. If the target's low on health, then she's going to use execute on them. It's nice. And now if you're in like a big brawl and you're just going down to the wire, you can use Dire Blow at the end and basically land that finishing blow. So that's cool. And they nerfed this part, which was, it's fine, whatever. Fearless Charge, again, look at my most recent video. That's really funny how fast she can go. Basically anything where the animation is increased by attack speed, it's just hilarious when you go to 200% attack speed, but you basically teleport over. But it's kind of nice, I suppose, because you'll be able to move faster since you have the built-in attack speed increase. So that's kind of cool. But obviously, I've been saving the best for last. Spin Slash, this is going to make the biggest difference. Obviously, I have a little bit more attack damage, or a little bit more damage on it. But the biggest thing is the attack speed increase. And aside from this being a pretty significant increase, this is like, you know, a tier 2.5 amount of percent difference. But if you know her kit, her shield comes up when you, or more often. I think the cooldown for her shield, her passive shield, gets reduced by 3 seconds if you hit a hero, and 1.5 if you hit a minion or monster. So this is really big for duels. She's going to be a lot better in lane. She's going to be doing more damage and getting more shields. So that's super nice. I'm not sure if that's going to put her in the top of DS lane heroes, but it's definitely a significant buff. Moving on, Ormar. Big changes to Ormar. They called this a rework. when Arena of Valor, the official Arena of Valor Twitter, can't talk now. The Arena of Valor Twitter, they tweeted about it, said, you know, these heroes get buffs, this heroes get nerfs, and then they called this a rework, but it's clearly a buff. More stun, and this is whenever he does damage. So slightly less than half the time, whenever he does damage, he's going to stun them, which is nuts considering you have abilities like Walking Tall. And in exchange for that, you have fixed 0.75 seconds, which is good, less RNG in the game, even though this is RNG, but I mean, technically this is less RNG now, right? Because it's more reliable. And now this is based on Ormar's maximum health and deals it as max damage. So this is worse in the early game and, well, pretty even in the late game because of the fact that it's magic damage. Early game, this would kind of chunk people, but you still really couldn't win DS lane fights, so it didn't really matter. The fact that this is maximum HP rather than current HP makes a big difference because before it was really hard to finish people off unless you had execute. But yeah, that is based on me playing Ormar like a year ago, so it's hard to tell like what his state was, but he definitely was losing to all the new DS laners that were out there. And all the DS laners that were buffed in order to deal with the new ones that are out there. But I played a lot of Ormar on, again, against bronze Taiwanese players. And this was okay, but it wasn't ridiculous. It does make you want to build him with HP. But it's not significant enough. Because it's only part of his passive, it's not like something that comes up a lot. It's not like part of his attack, like with Superman or with Xenial, where you can consistently get it off. It's not as big of a deal as you would imagine. You can't just build a ton of HP and expect it to work that way. Think of it like Mina or Malak, right? Like the extra HP matters, and if you didn't know, those heroes get extra damage based on HP. It matters, but not to the extent where you want to be completely changing your build to facilitate that. And then the cooldown goes from 4 to 6 seconds to make up for the fact that you have the extra chance. All right, and then Swagger. This is actually better, honestly, because what happens now? You get stacks. I don't know if you guys have played Ormar, but every time you hit someone with Swagger, it'll provide a stack, and then it goes every 3 times you hit something, it would turn red and you immediately stun them harder, basically. And that only applies to hitting heroes. But what I found was, I'm not sure if this was the case before, but on Taiwan, once you hit your 2 and you get gut punch and it turns red, you immediately, the cooldown is reset. I'm not sure that's how it worked before. I'm pretty sure that it wasn't. I played like over 100 games of Ormar on the NA server previously, and I'm pretty sure that's not how it was. But now it resets immediately, which is nice. And they reduced the cooldown just because he's getting buffed here. And this is super nice, the Walking Tall part. He gains a lot of health. It's not ridiculous, the 2% of his maximum health, but you can basically jump an entire team, and between the defense that you should have and the healing that you get on top of them, you're probably not going to die. You could get very low, and then you can just gut punch, or sorry, you can just jump out of there. But typically, you're not going to die if you jump in like the entire team, which is really, really cool. It's basically, he's kind of like a poor man's Yebuneth now, where you can just jump in there and heal, and you're likely not going to die. One thing to keep in mind is he can get stunned while using Walking Tall, but it's like Kali's ult or Jinnar's ult, where he will still keep spinning. He can't keep moving, but he can keep spinning when you stun him. So in a way, it's like he's CC immune in a way. And this is really cool. You can use your first ability while using Walking Tall. So while you're in the middle of spinning, you can dash. You can't actually auto attack, obviously, while you're spinning, but you can dash, which is really cool. So I wrote here that this might make him like OP. There's a chance for that. I've been playing with him, and he's not OP. Definitely not OP. He still loses to DS laners. I think he's going to be a reasonable support. I don't think he's going to be a good DS laner because there are just better ones out there. He can hold his own a little bit better, but I think it's still going to be a support. You might want to build like one kind of hybrid-y item on him so that he can be sort of a Yebineth type in the support role and deal some damage. He does have better mobility than Yebineth, just based in his normal kit, right? Like Yebineth has a situational Redwood Rush, whereas he can just dash in constantly. But yeah, I think he's going to be similar to Yebineth, where he deals some damage from the support role, and his ult's going to be super annoying because he's not going to die, essentially. So that's my prediction for Ormar, having played with him. He's not as OP as I had initially imagined, unfortunately for you guys, but he is certainly better. This is definitely a buff. All right, need some tea. Moving on, Zuka. This really hurts. Really hurts. I think I might have underestimated how much he got hurt by this, because I was thinking, oh, they're trying to give him some base damage so that he can build a little more tanky. But what is the purpose, really? It's an assassin warrior. I don't. He doesn't. It's just. It's a nerf. He does, like, this really hurts a lot. And even building him tanky, what does that really accomplish? He doesn't have the greatest CC. And so, just why, right? I think I maybe have underestimated how big of a nerf this is, because a lot of his damage just comes from this. He gets a slight buff in damage overall in the early game, but definitely not in the late game. And it's overall a nerf, because even if you consider the extra damage that he gets here, it's going to be worse because he doesn't have this damage adding to it. All right, moving on. Richter. This is really interesting. So a couple things to parse here. He gets more HP, growth per level, I should say. So he gets more HP in the late game. He gets more damage in the late game on the charge, and more damage on the swing part. So everything, all these are this buff, and you're like, wait a second, isn't Richter really good? So in return for that, they nerfed Retaliate to 5 seconds, which is a pretty big deal. Percent damage from Bush. I don't know if you guys knew this, but he did 10% damage, 10% of max HP damage from the Bush, which is nuts. And the only way to see this is to go in game, stand in the bush, and look at his abilities. If you look at his character screen, it doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say anything like that. It doesn't say, by the way, if you're in a bush, it does 10% of max HP. No, that's just not, yeah. So if you had even more, you have even more incentive to use your thing from a bush now, even though it starts at 5%. And yeah, you still want to do it from the bush, because now you get now you know that you get 5% damage from the bush, and it ends up being 10% later in the game. So basically, this is a pretty big nerf early, because you don't have your 3-second retaliate to combat people better. But in the late game, this is arguably a buff, because even with the retaliate, you can still get in the back of people, do the Richter thing where you stay alive in the midst of 5 heroes, and now you're more likely to take someone out, take one of the squishies out, because you have more damage. So I would say it's overall nerf, because Richter, part of what made him so scary was he could just kill people at the beginning of the game with just his jungle strike, and that's what makes him so hard to deal with. What made him really good, though, is that he was good in the early, mid, and late game. Now he's like less good in the early, but even better in the late game. So it makes him a little bit more balanced, because he was like okay in the late game. Good enough to warrant picking him because he was so amazing in the early game, and it kind of flattens out his OP-ness, as it were, because now he's going to be like decent to good all game long, rather than being like ridiculous early and then like still okay late. All right, Emily, a bit more damage. This is only right when it goes off. And this is the bird magic damage, so you're doing 20 more per second. It lasts for 6 seconds. It's fine. She's slightly better. Good. Tara, 5 seconds cooldown. Great. Okay, sure. She's still not very good. Arthur, 5 arm. I don't. Honestly, I speculated that they were just doing this to make his so that his numbers more even. because I don't get it. 5 armor is so little. It's like you're basically reducing like 1 damage off of you. I don't even know. Anyway, Scud, this is a little bit bigger buff, but it's a late game buff. It's basically the same in the early game, and it's 90 in the late game. And at that point, you should be just demolishing people anyway. I don't know what 90. I mean, to put this in perspective, squishies have like 7,000 to 8,000 health, and I don't know if 100 damage is going to make a difference, especially because it's on Furious Charge. So even if you Furious Charge in, use Wild Beast Fury, come out, you're doing like 180 damage more to squishies. Minus armor is like 120-ish. It's I guess it's not. I mean, they're even numbers at least, right? So that's good. Ibaneth, they killed his passive. I'm not sure why they killed his passive. I think they should just reduce the stun time on certain things, like on branching out or something like that. But yeah, this used to be 80 plus 15 per level. Now it's 32 plus 15 per level. They reduced it by 50 per tick, by the way. So it's like 5 ticks. So it's like 250 healing lost in the early game. Well, over the entire game, but it's a bigger deal in the early game. So that hurts a lot. And yeah, he's going to be worse in the early game, which I guess is important to make him worse in the early game because he was kind of oppressive. But I feel like they could have nerfed other parts instead of just making him have like very little passive. Anyway, Irie, sure. Marja, slight nerf. It's fine, not a big deal. Lubu, his third lunge goes from 300 to 350 units. If you guys didn't know, this used to be 350 units for all of his lunges, all of his dashes for Red Stallion. And they moved it to 300, but then because they need to have Lubu be good because he's this ancient hero in Chinese classical literature, they buffed him in other ways, but now he gets this part back, so OP. Anyway, obviously it's only the last part, but he moves faster and he goes farther, and that's the most important part of Red Stallion because that's the one that knocks them up. So this is going to help him a lot as far as getting to the backline. I know it doesn't seem like much, but Lubu Masters will definitely notice the difference. It'll help you dive the backline in team fights. It'll help you chase people down, help you run away. It seems tiny, but it's a bigger buff than it seems. All right, teaming. Up to 40% of the cooldown is reduced. So if you have the maximum, if you wait the entire time, if you hold that fort as long as possible and you let it go you don't even touch the button to activate it, you just let it go, it will go from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. However, if you use Putty Poots immediately, then there's 0 cooldown reduction. So keep that in mind. This seems OP, but you have to hold it for a long time. And that kind of, on the one hand, yeah, you get a longer stun if you hold it longer as well. So it's in general with team you want to be holding as long as possible. But for people thinking they're just going to be spamming Putty Poots, that's not how it works. You need to, in order to have the next Putty Poots be reduced by cooldown, you need to be holding for a long time. And so, therefore, you're not going to be like constantly chain sending people, right? You're going to be if you want to have the 3 second reduced cooldown, you're going to have to wait like 5 seconds to even use your first Putty Poots in the first place. So keep that in mind. It's basically a big reward for holding it as long as possible, holding your farts as long as possible. Everywhere along the line, like if you hold it for like a couple seconds, it ends up being like, you know, like a half a second to 1 second cooldown reduction. If you hold it for most of the time, it's like a 1.5 cooldown, a 1.5 second reduction. Having tested it, so yeah, it's not as crazy as people might think. It's just kind of nice. I did some ratings here. I think I might change some of these. Like Omar isn't quite as buffed as I thought, but if you want to check that out, go look at the article or just pause the video, I suppose. Let's go over the heroes that were nerfed in, when was that? December 27th? Or not nerfed, changed in December 27th on Taiwan. These are finally coming to the Tencent servers. So let's take a look at those. Annette, she had her damage reduced by 10 per tick, and that's a potential of 8 ticks. So 80, and then put that all together. It's something. Also, the cooldown hurts a lot too. In the late game, being able to do this every 6.5 seconds minus CDR is kind of nice. This also kind of hurts. The wind cuffs, the passive where you get the shield when someone stuns you, that's going to be longer and going to be annoying to, or going to be less annoying to deal with Annette when you stun her. Okay, this is nothing. And then Roxy got buffed across the board. This is pretty nice. You get a decent amount of extra AP because of this. Same here. This is actually surprisingly a lot. It turns into like 60 or something like that, if you consider the way the rest of her kit works. But this is the biggest part, right? They lowered the cooldown on this. They lowered the cooldown on this. It was actually 12 to 10 seconds. So it went from 12 to 10 to 10 to 8. So now in the late game, you get to use Blazing Shield, get in there, Agnes Grasp him, and then this gets reset, by the way. If you hit a hero with Agnes Grasp, so you get to zoom out of there, even faster than before. And if they try to hit you, then they're going to get slowed for 2 seconds. So she's going to be an Agnes Grasp bot, basically. You just go in there, Blazing Shield, boom, get him, run back, they're dead. As long as you get them in your team. So Roxy, even though they kept continuously nerfing her HP, she's kind of situational, but she is devastating if you're able to use her properly and land Agnes Grasp. Quillen got a bit of a nerf. You get like 200-ish lost health for using Assassinate. So the thing that's nice about this is you can't just kill someone, have like a third of your HP, heal back up to like 2/3 of your HP, and then go back in. Now you're a little bit punished for that. There's slightly less damage on Decimate as well, but the most damage was coming from Mutilate anyway. So if you want to kill people with Quillen, you're still going to be able to do so. It's just you won't be able to like get in, get out, heal a ton, and then get back in again. It's going to be harder to do that, but he's still going to be really, really good. Kali, this is basically nothing. This is just her attack speed. And auto attacks usually don't miss unless something happens. So this should only affect the AoE part of our attack. If you guys didn't know, Kali has like a piercing attack, not magic pierce, but it like hits the target and goes through and hits stuff behind it. And if this will miss less often to the targets behind it, which I've never really been in a situation where I attacked with Kali and like the pierce part missed, but I guess this is just to like ensure that when she attacks, whatever is there in her line of attack, it's going to get damaged. It's just kind of guaranteeing that it's basically nothing. Anyway, moving on. Arduin. This is really nice. This attack speed growth per level. If you don't know, everyone starts with 0, unless you're like a special hero. I'm not sure if there's any special heroes who start with more than that at level 1. But so it grows by 2. It used to grow by 2, and now it's going to grow by 3. And what that means is when you're level 15, he's going to be 42% attack speed rather than 28. So that is like an item's worth of attack speed. It's a really big deal. He's now on par with Scud, Lubu, Xanus, and Kilgroth as far as attack speed is concerned. And that helps a lot for Arduin because he has this ability called Bloodlust, which requires him to use abilities and or auto attack in order to gain back life. And speaking of Bloodlust, it's reduced to 45 seconds. This is his lifeblood. This is the reason why he's tanky, other than kind of his shield a little bit. But the reason why he's considered a very tanky hero is because of Bloodlust, but you can't use Bloodlust if you don't have it, and this will make him a lot better in lane, where you get to use it every other fight, every other wave, basically, and really trade well with your opponent. So it seems like not a big deal. It's just like, oh, one number change, none of them change, but it's very, very nice. I was playing Arduin on Taiwan, and it feels a lot better. Ignis, less healing. Like I noted here, it's 30 reduced healing in the early game, 300 reduced healing in the late game. The biggest part of this is the AP power, or AP power, ability power was halved. So that means that the amount that he heals went down like basically 40% in the late game, considering like this is most of the healing that he receives. And that's really interesting because in the early game he's still going to be like decent as far as healing is concerned, but those times when you see Ignis get caught, but then he just miraculously gets away with a couple of fire crashes, or with a fire crash and a couple sorry, I had it right the first time, with a couple of fire crashes and like a rain of fire. Those times are going to be less because he's going to be healing like 40% less. So what this does is it makes it so that in the late game it's easier to pin him down because he's not going to be healing as much. Those miraculous escapes are going to be a bit less. Fire crash, this is mostly an early game nerf, because in the early game this 40 damage matters, in the late game not so much. So that was needed. He was very oppressive in the early game, and this is a really good change in my opinion. He's still the same hero, but changing from 1 second to 0.75 seconds is a really big deal, especially because this is the part of the, or in the early game most people don't have Gilded Greaves, because in the early game you'd rather get your Phoenix tier first if you're the opposing mage, and he could literally just kill you in the early game, or at the very least chunk you for most of your health. And having this changed to 0.75 seconds is really nice. He still can stun you, and it's still nice at any part of the game, but you can't just kill someone in the early game because you caught them in your rain of fire after fire crash. So that's these are definitely changes that I agree with. He's still going to be fine, and I think I've seen players like Hawk play Ignis on the Taiwanese server and do fine with him still, but this, yeah, he's going to be slightly less oppressive, which is very, very nice. Okay, that's going to be it. Thank you guys for listening / watching, and should I be cordy and say hope to see you on Antara's Battlefield? Hope to see you on Antara's Battlefield. Enjoy the patch. Let me know what you think in the comments. See you guys.